Okay guys, so in this video I'm going to show you the viewport meta tag and how that connects into responsive design on the web. So let's get into it. Now here we have some basic HTML for an unresponsive site, and here we have HTML for a responsive site, and the main difference here is line 6, where we have declared a viewport. And in the viewport we have a content attribute that contains some information. We will walk through all these properties and what they mean in just a moment. But let's first look at an example. So here we have an unresponsive website, and this is fairly common, where you see that the content of the page has been kind of squished together to fit the view itself. And this is what the browser will do by default. It will simply try to scale down everything so that it fits the viewport. Now, in order to actually get a responsive layout, we want to explain to the browser that, hey, make the viewport width equal to the device width, so and base your calculations based on that instead. So the way that it's going to look if you do that is something like this, and this is a much more it's a device independent way of declaring styling. Basically, all we've done is to put this meta tag here and told the browser a few things, which are these attributes, and we'll look at it in just a moment. But notice that the text here, it's larger, the dimensions of the image are like much nicer, it's proportional, and the content height is equal to the content itself. In other words, this thing here is not being declared, it's not being calculated correctly. Like the dimensions are not the viewport dimensions are not based on the device width itself, but here it is. And that's where this idea of responsive design comes into play, right? So here we have the width, which we have set to the device width, and all that is basically saying that, alright, set the viewport to the width of the device. That's it. Then we have the initial scale, which is set to 1.0. All you kind of need to know about that is that when you are on a website, maybe you never tried it, but if you are on, say, an unresponsive website, you can actually just zoom and pan back and forth and stuff of that nature. Now, that's not really like a responsive design, like being able to zoom like that, or having the requirement to zoom because the content is so small, or doesn't, like if you have a lot of content, especially like if your content is very wide, the content is going to appear on your device extremely small, and that's kind of where the zooming idea comes from, because you kind of have to be able to zoom when the content is that small. But here you don't have that issue, and the reason why you don't have that issue is because of this meta tag, right? So the initial scale here, all you're saying here is that, alright, set the zoom level to 1. In other words, the initial zoom level. It's very rare to change the initial scale, actually, so the scale is just 1.0, like equal to the device width. And then you have this thing here called the maximum scale. Now, I have a few properties here that, as you can see, the initial scale, the maximum scale, and the user scalable is set to yes. But if I try to zoom here, nothing happens. And the reason why nothing happens is because I have set that the initial scale is going to be 1, but I'm also saying that the maximum scale should be 1. Now, if I wanted, for some reason, to make it possible to zoom on my responsive site here, I'll set that to a 2, refresh the page, and now I can actually zoom to twice the zoom level, or twice the scale of the device width, right? So that's basically all that is. And then finally we have this thing called user scalable yes, and you can probably imagine what happens if I set that to no. And now I try to swipe again, and now I can't zoom anymore. So this is just a very basic introduction to this tag, and the things that we've talked about so far is just something that it's very, very boilerplate. Now, I will tell you that from my experience, usually what you do is that you simply declare something like this, like that, and this is good for all. This will do for almost any project. So all you have to remember now is that if you want to be able to do responsive design on the web, add this viewport meta tag with this basic content, and you're set. That's basically it. So I hope you found this useful, and have a great day.